Yeah, it is another episode of the Autumn Windbags. RJ Clifford, Juan Soto. Let's have some fun today. Extremely jet lagged. Just off a plane from Australia 2 days ago. Can't stay awake. Keep taking midday naps. I'm not going to be able to assimilate. But when I do sleep, Soto, I sleep like a fucking baby. Eagles 40, Chiefs 22. Typical stat padding at the end. It should have been 60-3. The Chiefs got bent over, smacked, every hole, screaming for mercy. It could not have gone better on that Sunday afternoon. It was just a glorious thing to see.
Yeah, in reality, the score was 34-0. That was the real score of the game. Once it was 34-0 in the second half, they're just like, nah.
Taking your foot off the pedal in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's
having to. Yeah, pretty embarrassing.
You're like, hold on, let's save our starters for next week. Oh, wait. Just because we want to. Just to embarrass them. We're gonna take our foot off the gas.
Question.
Answer.
I'm gonna give you a few, okay? What's the most embarrassing thing? Losing 40-22 in the Super Bowl. There's one.
It's pretty embarrassing.
Getting booed out of the stadium, Taylor Swift, when she got put on the Jumbotron.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Getting exposed for being just an absolute dog and not in the good way. Travis Kelce, all the video clips of him like mailing in blocks and like not doing anything during the game. There's that. Patrick Mahomes Sr. almost getting the shit kicked out of him by John Rocker. All right. There's 4.
That's a combination I never thought I'd see. Like what two pieces of shit randomly that I would love to see beat each other up.
Oh, dude, it wouldn't even be close. Or there's Drake being called a pedophile by every person in the country at the same time.
Yeah, that halftime show got totally polarizing. I wonder if the Super Bowl officials of the NFL were like, oh, we just let this guy have the biggest platform in the world to like settle his petty gripe with some Canadian rapper.
Dude, it was like, you kind of have to respect it because it's like, look, there's going to be nothing that Drake can do that's going to have a bigger audience than what he's about to do. He could have played it straight. He could have just sung his hits. He could have done that and like really had a really nice. And I mean, I like the performance. I don't know if you got kind of picked up on the nuances of this whole thing, but the whole set, basically the field, was like a Sony PS5, right? Mm-hmm. Sony Music is the label that Drake is signed with. It wasn't by accident, okay? Mm-hmm. It wasn't by accident that Drake's ex, Serena Williams, was dancing on the X, okay? Mm-hmm. And after the whole thing was over, the Game Over popped up in the crowd. There's just not much Drake can do to salvage. Like, he needs to dust off that wheelchair and just wheel himself back to Canadian TV at this point.
The sign that it's a real success is if bell bottoms come back. I haven't seen bell bottoms on anybody in my entire lifetime.
He was wearing those Lenny Kravitz jeans, and
they're bell bottoms. They're bell bottoms. They're definitely bell bottoms. We'll see if they come back. That'll be a real sign of his behavior. This is what happens when it's not 18-11 in a Chiefs game, right? When it's just 11 players on 11 players, not 11 players plus 7 refs. You know, like that's why I was so happy, and we talked about it last week. We're like, I'm so stoked that the entire narrative leading to the Super Bowl, and there's a couple big narratives. Are they going to three-peat? You know, is Nick Sirianni's? This is like I was coming back, and then all the Bama players on the Eagles, and Taylor Swift's going to be there. But one of like an amazingly huge narrative leading to Super Bowl week is like the refs have been bailing out the Chiefs all season long, and they had like and Roger Goodell had to talk about it. Chiefs players had to talk about it. Like it was getting black market traction, you know. But then it was like the movers and shakers, like refs themselves and their association had to come out and defend it. So like, oh, thank God. They're all going to have to be on their best behavior. Yeah. It's like when you got hammered drunk last Thanksgiving at your in-laws, and so this next Thanksgiving you just don't have it. Like you're gonna like gently sip one glass of white wine for 5 hours because you don't want to, you're a fucking drunk. You don't want to be exposed again. That was the referees. They're like, all right, we're gonna have to. I can't believe it, but we're gonna have to play it straight, and that's what happened.
Yeah, they're like the 50-50 calls. They just let them go. It's like, we don't want to do it. Like we don't want to like tarnish anyone's victory by giving the Eagles more calls. Let's just not call a lot of the stuff.
I have this crazy, wild, novel idea. Let's just let the players play the game.
Let just the players play. So I was talking to homegirl's son, and he's like, "What do you think's going to happen before the game?" And I'm like, I said, "Look, let's think back, right? The last time the Chiefs really got beat, like really beat up, was when we beat them on Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And how did we beat them? You rush 4 and you drop 7 and you wait for Mahomes to make mistakes." And I'm like, okay. And then when's the last time they lost in the Super Bowl? To the Bucks, who rushed 4 and dropped 7 and harassed Mahomes and made him make mistakes. Philadelphia can do that. I said, I think they're going to do that. I think they're just going to rush 4 and drop 7 and just wait for Mahomes to make mistakes. And that's exactly what happened.
I'm so glad we didn't draft Jalen Carter, because
I don't want to talk about that, dude.
Because, he had that one DUI a long time ago. And that's all things people are going to remember about
that long ago. But still, I get it.
He had that one DUI. So there's no way we could have drafted him. Yeah, man. Like, and that makes me like all I can think about, like, again, like I wish we had Jalen Carter, but 2, like, let's say we get Mason Graham. Is there a real possibility we'll draft Mason Graham, defensive tackle at Michigan with number 6?
You would be so lucky to get Mason Graham, dude.
There would be like, I would say, honestly, of any player in the draft, most likely that we're going to get probably Mason Graham, just because I think both quarterbacks are going to be gone. Travis Hunter will be gone. I think it's just
Johnson's coming off of an injury. We don't know how fast he's going to run.
Yep. At the end of Penn State's going to be probably gone. Like again, I don't think there's a single player that's over 50% chance we're going to get. I don't think I think the way things are going to move, but I think the most likely odds is Mason Graham, and you've got Crosby, Mason, Wilkins, and then any number of the others. Tyree Wilson gets his act together. We keep Koonce, whatever. Like we have a lot of options on the other side. That just goes to show you like what a truly elite defensive line can do. Just completely shut down Andy Reid.
Need too. I mean, look, the Eagles spent they spent for Huff, right? They spent the most money. There was their big free agent signing was Huff, who was inactive, a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl, because he just wasn't good enough. The other players were playing better, so it's not just enough to have a good player or 2 good players. You need to have 3 really good players, and you have a bunch of other guys who just kind of rotate in and out. And I see us drafting a lot of defensive and offensive linemen, interior offensive linemen in this draft.
A lot of depth there. It's a good draft for
I would say at least 2 and 2. 2 and 2, an edge rusher and an interior defensive lineman, and 2 interior offensive linemen. I think, look, the way things are shaping up for us in this draft, there are a ton. When I say a ton, I mean like you can wait till the 4th, 5th round and still get a really, really good starting level running back in this draft. There are that many. There's a ton. Okay. There's a lot of defensive, defensive, not edge rushers, but like defensive linemen. There's a lot of those good ones. And there's a ton of interior offensive linemen, because a lot of the tackles that have been even Will Campbell and stuff, like he was a left tackle in college, but his arms are a little shorter. There's like the Wyatt Millum, the guy from West Virginia who was a left tackle. His arms are kind of short. And we've seen how that doesn't work for tackles, right? So, I mean, There's a lot of players in areas where we need a lot of help.
And in fairness, like, I think Vic Fangio is the best coach in the NFL. Head coach, OC, DC. I think he's the best. Like, it's just everywhere he goes, it's a top 3 defense every single time, right? And the Eagles' total roster is probably the most talented roster in the NFL. So, there's a lot of things going on, not just an elite defensive line, but there's no question the elite defensive line is what took over and made this the lopsided, complete ass pounding that it became. And the Raiders are in a very, very good position to have a top 3 D line next season that could spur anything, right? It could be the launching pad for everything else. And there's no better example in the Super Bowl than when Andy Reid, first ballot Hall of Famer, Patrick Mahomes, first ballot Hall of Famer, and the tight end that will remain nameless, first ballot Hall of Famer, got washed, completely embarrassed. And then you have the second the NFL takes the end racism sign off of the end zone, you had Cooper DeJean getting pick 6. So that's another part of it, too.
On his birthday,
right? Can't be a coincidence. I saw a lot of memes. I felt like, Kelsey's not going to get any ass tonight. Taylor's going to be so pissed. I'm like,
he would never get any ass. She ain't got no ass to give.
Dude, Taylor Swift just looks like she's awful in bed. She just looks like she'd be the one that just kind of like takes off her pants, leaves her shirt on, crawls under the covers, I just get that. Maybe I'm just like stereotyping incorrectly. But it's like, I think best case scenario, if they would have won 60-0, I think Travis Kelce's getting like a sad, dry hand job. They get their ass kicked. It's like, he's not even allowed to jerk off by himself now.
Yeah, he's got to do a dry jerk. She's hiding all the lotion, conditioner.
Yeah, that's serial killer level jerking when you do the dry. That's like torturing little animals as a 5-year-old. You're like, that's going to be a messed up human when you do a dry jerk. I can see Kelsey doing that Sunday night.
He just looked, the whole Chiefs team just looked like they knew they were outmatched, but they had to play the game anyway. That's how they played. What happens? Like, what happens when you encounter a bully and you step up to him? Most of the times they're gonna just step back, and that's who the Chiefs have been. They've been that bully, but it was false hope because they had all the refs behind them.
It was a combination of you're the bully and the teacher's pet. That's a combination that never happens. Like, the bullies don't have the teachers on their side.
Eddie Haskell style, dude.
Right? It's like you get to pick on people, and when you get in trouble, the teacher's gonna be like, well, no, he's actually got a good heart. He's got to start for us this weekend on Friday against our rivals on homecoming weekend. So we'll let him walk. You rarely get both. I watched the game at the airport lounge in Sydney. I got to watch like 3.5 quarters, which was rare for me on these travel days, but it was great. And it was me with like 5 Americans and like 20 Aussies that didn't know what they were watching, but they just saw us drinking beer and yelling at a TV at sports. And they're like, we're in. Like, I don't know what you're doing, but that's an international language, drinking beer, watching sports, and hooting and hollering. And I was sitting next to our cameraman whose son went to Alabama, didn't play football, but went to Alabama the same year as Hurts and like all those guys. So he had an Alabama cane. He was all Eagles. I was obviously all Eagles because they were playing the Chiefs. And we had this old Aussie lady like walks by us because we're kind of by the food, and she grabs the food and goes by. She's like, guys, some of us are trying. Can you keep it down? Some of us are trying to rest. And she just keeps walking. We look at each other, and for about 0.8 seconds, I felt like semi-guilty. I'm like, well, maybe she has a point. And then this girl, Mackenzie, who works at the .com part, she's like, that's the worst thing she could have said to you guys, huh? I'm like, yeah, fuck her. It's the Super Bowl. If you can't get nuts for a Kansas City Chiefs ass whooping on the Super Bowl, when can you? Right? It's like you should immediately be pardoned by the president of whatever country you're in.
It's un-American. Tell her it's
un-American. We're in what, international waters? I don't know how that works in an airport, but it's un-American. Sticking to it.
Definitely did the right thing by hooping and hollering.
It was so fun, dude. It was because I've watched the Super Bowl. Like the vast majority of Super Bowls I've watched in my life have been a big Super Bowl party, friends and family, bunch of food. someone's house, and it's great. Airport, maybe it was just because the result. If it went the other way, maybe I would have said it was the worst way to watch a Super Bowl ever. So I'm willing to be wrong, but it was a fun way. Just surrounded by foreigners that were like, "What's going on? What are you doing? I can get behind this." Like, yeah. Come, like they're gonna kick a field goal now. All right, so like now we get the ball. You're kind of explaining a little bit, not so much where it's annoying. It's a lounge with free booze. You're just going to town, just like pulling, and we were all watching on one. It was like a 45-inch standard definition TV. We're all just like huddled around it. But it was like I think it was because of the ass whooping, but it was so fun. It was one of the funner Super Bowl experiences I've had in a long time, just because it was different. And we got to watch a bunch of Chiefs cry.
I remember watching the 49ers beat the Bengals. I think it was 1987. I think I was 88. I think I was 10 years old. I forget. I think so. And I was excited because my parents let me go into their I don't know why, but when I was a kid, you weren't allowed in your parents' room. So they let me go in there and watch it on their 24-inch TV. And I was so excited. I got to watch it.
It had a remote control.
I got to watch it on the big TV.
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, one day we'll see the Raiders in the Super Bowl again. I was 6 months old last time the Raiders won a Super Bowl. But we will see them win on that field one day. And we're going to need a goddamn good quarterback to do it. Most likely, we're going to have a pretty damn good quarterback. And the best good goddamn quarterback that will be a free agent next season, I think, is pretty much, it's so hard to get the football world to be unanimous on anything. But it's pretty unanimous. Sam Darnold's the best available. Right? You're like, all right, kind of shit the bed late and, blah, blah, blah. But like, I'll take the problem of having a 14-game winning season any day. It's like, oh, you only won 14 games? Okay. I'll deal with that problem. We'll assess it later. According to Adam Schefter, I think the Las Vegas Raiders are going to make a play for Sam Darnold. I think he's a candidate to be the Raiders quarterback. Now, us in Raider Nation, that sounds like a no-brainer. We need a quarterback. We have draft capital. We got cap space. We got a whole new regime. Pete Carroll says we want to win now. We got the most expensive offensive coordinator in football. We got we're ready to win. Mark Davis is like, I'm opening up the piggy bank. Like he literally took the hammer, crashed it, and is handing out $1 million bills to whoever can like maybe get us a win, right? But when Schefter is asked where do you think he'll go? What do you think? And he says Raiders. I think that's important. And I think Schefter is a lot of things. But he hates being wrong. He despises it. And so when you kind of float something and he floats back, I think he knows something. I think he's hearing stuff. And I think it's good to hear.
Yeah, it's still kind of fluffy,
It's very fluffy.
For what he was saying, because he really didn't say anything. He said he's a candidate to be the Raiders quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think that, the question you asked me the question last week, who's the best, who do I think it's going to be, or the best fit for a quarterback? And I said Sam Darnold right away. Mm-hmm. So I don't really put in too much into Schefter. Schefter's a hater anyway, but as far as him putting himself out there, he said absolutely nothing in that tweet. Yeah,
he didn't divulge any sources or add a data point or a factoid.
Literally didn't say anything. He's a candidate to be a Raiders quarterback. Oh, okay, sure, everyone's a candidate. Anyone who's eligible to be an NFL quarterback is a candidate. That's not saying anything.
I was just looking for a launching pad to talk about Sam Darnold to the Raiders. This was like my jumping off point. It's like I needed a headline, and Schefter on McAfee talking Raiders is like always a headline. So like, all right, this is gonna be my jumping
for us point. At least, because they never talk about us unless it's about some nonsense.
When I think about like the odds of Darnold going to the Raiders, it's like, okay, like what tangibly has to happen? It's like, well, he does have to. He's not a restricted free agent, right? He's he's completely free agent, right? 100%, right? Unrestricted free agent. So it's not like, so I think the Vikings will I think he'll listen to the Vikings first, right? But he'll be able to go wherever he wants. I think, who was it? Was it the Vikings GM? Great journalism, RJ. It was someone on the Vikings that was like, Sam Darnold deserves the right to be a free agent. Like, he's earned the right. Like, he played as well as he did. And that's like that's like a damn clever way of trying to give yourself credit for something you're going to do anyway. You're like, well, we're going to offer him $150 million to be here for the next 10 years, but we're good people. And Sam Darnold deserves to test the market. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, fair play to you. But that sounds like the decision maker at the Vikings. And maybe I'll find it while you're talking. Is like, yeah, we're going to roll with JJ, and Sam, you can go test the open market and see where you go. So it sounds like he will hit the open market, like open. The Vikings will be like, yeah, go ahead. And then it's a matter of who are we going up against? Who is also very quarterback needy? And do they have the resources to get the guy that's going to have the guy that's probably going to have the biggest contract this offseason just because he's the quarterback, right? Like, maybe one of the chance the Bengals wide receivers will get bigger. Maybe we'll get bigger contracts because they're better. But again, when you're a free agent quarterback, you're not walking away with less than $100 million. Like, it's just the market.
It's just the way it is.
It's just how it is.
All right, let's take a look.
So who we got?
Tennessee, Cleveland, and the Giants. They can draft a quarterback.
That's the other big thing too, which is why I think Schefter's like, the Raiders will be in it, because you're immediately taking away two quarterback needy teams that are going to draft Shador.
He's not going back to the Jets. The Saints don't have enough money.
Steelers. Sounds like they're moving on from Russ, and they probably want to improve on Justin. Even if they kept him, I think Steelers will need somebody. I'm curious what happens with the Rams. Like, are they going to do it again with Stafford? But
well, here's the thing: Stafford has said he wants to play another year. You're not going to pay Stafford the money you're paying him, and then pay Darnold a ton of money to be a backup. Because if you have them both on the same team, Stafford's going to start.
Oh, for sure. Like, what I'm saying is, they might want to move on from Stafford and trade him, and do like a Darnold or something. But all that does is it's like a zero-sum game, because now another quarterback needy team has somebody, right? So it's like, regardless of what happens with Stafford, a quarterback needy team has a quarterback. So
we have the inside track, because it just came out today. The franchise tag for quarterbacks is, I think, 41 and change million. Mm-hmm. So we're not in jeopardy of the Vikings doing that. They're not going to do that. Also, if they're going to allow Darnold to kind of test the market, he's not going to come back. It's just the way it is. It's the way it works.
It's because the Vikings are so nice to let him test the open market.
Once they get, let's say that it's the Raiders. He's going to get into the room, and the Raiders are going to sit down, and if they want to make a deal happen, they're going to make a deal happen. They're not going to let him leave. They're not going to let him shop the offer. It's like, dude, let's get this done right now. Quit the bullshit. Quit messing around. We're going to offer you this, and they're going to hammer it out. So I don't see anyone, if Sam Darnold is the guy that we want 100%, then we have the inside track. We have them cap space. The only other team that has more cap space has two quarterbacks. They're probably going to trade Joe Milton, who is New England. Mm-hmm. If for whatever reason we miss out on Sam Darnold and we miss out on a quarterback, the top two quarterbacks are gone by the time we pick at 6, and you roll into the third round, what's the difference if you draft a quarterback with one of your third round picks, or if you trade one of your third round picks for Joe Milton? If you have Joe Milton rated higher than whoever's available when you pick in the third round, There's no difference. So that's
just
another
one.
avenue
Just one more year of rookie deal. That's it.
Doesn't matter. If you think he's a better quarterback, then you go with the better quarterback. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't mind seeing Joe Milton in Chip Kelly's offense. He can definitely run the freaking ball, and he's huge. So there's a lot of possibilities that we have, and I think all of them have very strong positives. There's no perfect situation, right? You're not picking number one with like a franchise altering quarterback available, right? But let's say we miss out and we want to go and we end up getting like Shedeur Sanders at 6. Okay, I'm good with that. We sign Darnold and we go BPA the rest of the time and get maybe one of these quarterbacks with one of our 3rd round picks or a 4th round pick, whatever, just to kind of have a guy with actual really good tools to learn behind Darnold. Okay, we can do that. Let's say we trade one of our 3rd round picks for a Joe Milton. Okay, I'm fine with that too. So we have a lot of avenues that we can go to at quarterback, and I think they all have their positives.
Yeah, I mean, that's I feel like that's like the best case scenario, right? We sign Darnold and pick up one of these like super athletic but super raw 2nd or 3rd round quarterbacks and build from there, right? Like you got,
look, the thing is,
you got Farva. That's not, he's again, whether you like Farva or not, he's not going anywhere. So he's always part of the equation. He's in a rookie deal. He's staying, right? So he can be there and learn the system or whatever.
It's not like a done deal that he's going to be on the squad next year.
I mean, he can be traded. He's not going anywhere.
Exactly. Because if you, I can see him being on the 49ers and having a nice long career as a backup at the 49ers. Chip Kelly's smart, dude. He's going to be able to run an offense that's going to help in any quarterback that he has be successful. Okay, so you don't necessarily have to be a runner. But if you do go that direction, all the quarterbacks kind of have to fall in line. You kind of have to have them all be kind of the same guy. And
what do we always say about a backup quarterback?
Yeah,
he's got to always be healthy and be able to plug and play when the starter
run the same system. You got to be able to run the same shit.
And if we're going with a running quarter, if we go with like I
won't say running, but a more mobile quarterback. But look,
running adjacent.
If
running light,
I think that there's a lot more similarities than differences in the games of Sam Darnold and Farva. I just think Farva's like a step below in everything, pretty much. Mobility, deep accuracy, arm talent, stuff like that. But I mean, I can see them working the same system. You're kind of hamstringing yourself a little bit. But there's ways you can go around that. You can do what did he do? What did he do in the past? When he had Sam Darnold, not Sam Darnold, when he had Sam Bradford, he used he did a lot of Wildcat, right? Where he would run the RPO with I forgot what his name was, but he was a receiver that was a quarterback in college. So he can still run the RPO. He just motioned him out. So he can do these things. You can make it happen even if you don't have a mobile quarterback. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult. So you can still run the full complement of your plays. It's just going to look a little bit different.
So the Jets, it's again another zero-sum game. They're going to move on from Rodgers, but Rodgers will land somewhere. So a quarterback-needy team is going to get Rodgers. So that's that's like again.
I mean, it's a possibility he retires.
It's possible. All signs from him are that he wants to play one more year. But yeah, it's impossible. It's certainly possible. We hope he sticks around because then that just fills in one more quarterback spot that we don't have to negotiate against. You mentioned Browns. They're probably going to need somebody. I honestly wonder what they're going to do because they desperately need another one, but they're just so cap stricken by Massage Boy. They're just like, let's just suck it up one more year. Like we got to pay this guy another $90 million guaranteed. It's like, let's just bite the bullet and go with him again. Go with Deshaun again, just because paying him so goddamn much.
Yeah, I think the Browns are just going to play the long game because they're going to end up having to trade Myles Garrett. So they're pretty fortunate that they have an Abdul Carter sitting there waiting just for, to plug into the spot that Myles Garrett. I'm not saying he's going to be Myles Garrett, but he plays the same position. So you can put a dynamic player in that position, and whatever you get in draft capital for the trade, you can maybe figure something out. If not this year, maybe next year to get a quarterback. But there's a lot of avenues to go right now, and it's from what we thought. I think maybe a month ago, maybe from when we started kind of seeing how things were going to lay out as far as the draft order goes. This draft is pretty intriguing. There's a lot of like underlying stories to really make it a pretty interesting draft this season, because there's these teams can go multiple ways, and they're all, there's logic behind these decisions, right? So you look at it, Tennessee they have one or two little avenues. If they're not taking a quarterback, they're probably going to take Travis Hunter. But Cleveland, for sure, if they don't want to go quarterback because they feel like, they're okay for now and they're maybe a year or two away from really contending anyway, get rid of Garrett, replace him with a rookie, and stockpile.
Get 2 draft picks and $100 million in cap space. And
yeah. So it's you see the logic behind it. The Giants, the same thing. We could realistically see Derek Carr playing in New York for either one of the New York teams. I know the Saints have a $10 million roster bonus plus almost $40 million in salary this year for Derek Carr. So I don't know if they want to do that with the cap, because they need to cut $71 million in cap. There's $71 million over the cap.
The Saints, like, anytime anyone tells me, it's like, people say like the cap isn't real, and it's like, no, come on, it is.
There's $71 million over the cap.
And then you go to the Saints are the biggest example of no, it's not real. Like, they've been over the cap for like 10 years. They're like in perpetuity. They've been like 50 million over the cap for as long as there's been a cap. They're just like,
it's
just kicking it down the line all the time.
Yeah, their defense is getting older. Their offense is just they're injured. I mean, Chris Olave had 2 serious concussions last year. It wasn't like he banged up a knee or an ankle or something. Like, he had bad concussions last year, and they need to get younger and they need to get cheaper. And I don't know that Derek Carr has really shown that he's earned the money that he's going to make, especially the money. That money is worth more because they're so over the cap. So that relief, they can get $40 million in relief, or maybe closer to 50, I think, with the bonus, like that. So they can get most of it taken care of with one player. And you take a look at teams that
what is his guaranteed money left? I wonder what his guaranteed money is.
I'm not quite sure, but I know this year it's almost $50 million, I believe, in a cap hit.
So if they cut him, so his base salaries up until this year were fully guaranteed. So 4 year, 150 mil. In March 2025, Carl earned a base salary of $30 million and a roster bonus of 10, like you mentioned.
It's 40. Yes, 40.
They restructured the contract to save $23 million. I don't know when. Okay, if released prior to 2025, Carl will carry a $50 million dead cap hit.
Yeah, it's
pretty standard operating.
They're already 70 over.
Yeah,
another $50 million on top of that. Hey, shut up.
Well, no, it's the $50 million. That's what they'll carry if he's released.
That's what I'm saying.
So how much will they trade him?
He'll get traded for like maybe a 5th round pick, because the team that takes him, it's worth getting rid of all that cap space.
Well, I don't know how much. That's what I'm trying to find out, is how much cap space they're saving. If they're saving a ton, then they'll get rid of him for a 5th, right? If they're not saving, if they're saving like 10 million with a cut and there's still 50 million in of dead money, then they'll probably just keep him, because it's like that 10 million isn't worth the 50 million's worth it. 30 million's worth it.
Oh yeah.
Would they trade him for pennies for 10? I don't know. I hate doing cap stuff, man. It's so complicated. It makes my brain hurt.
It's so weird.
Long story short,
hey, if I would have told you last year that we would trade a aging, dropsies ridden, just butthurt, leaky butthole Devontae Adams for Joe Milton, would you do it? I would have. Yeah, we ended up picking Cam Richardson, and then the next round we picked freaking Eichenberg instead of picking Joe Milton. He was right there to freaking take. Good job.
Well, I mean, we got a third for Devontae. I think a third for Milton.
You flip that third for Joe Milton this year.
Yeah, maybe. So this is like a way more. So like initially, like 3 months ago, when we're already like, okay, what are we gonna do for quarterback next season? We're like, dude, there's like the cupboards are fucking bare. The draft is rough. But then when you really dig deep into it, there's so many moving parts.
It's crazy.
Once there's more moving parts, it's easier to kind of grab. It's like the claw machine at like Chuck E. at a fair.
Well, yeah, because like
there's a lot going on.
Each team only has certain logical avenues to go down. There's only, especially the quarterback needy teams. New Orleans isn't signing anybody. Okay, they're not signing a damn soul. They're throwing shit off the freaking ship. They got too much cargo. Okay,
they're adding a quarterback to the mix without taking one. You know what I'm saying? Like they're making it easier to get one because there's another one in the mix.
They're probably going to draft another one, and they're going to stick with Spencer Rattler or Jake Hayner, whoever. They're going to just have that little mishmash of whoever skip, scaps, scallywags, and also Rand's going to have running around there. Yeah, you know, there's only so much that the Rams can do because Stafford is making the money that he's making. They already redid his contract, and he's saying he wants to play next year. Okay, Pittsburgh's in a situation too because they're not cap rich either. They're having to let go of both of their running backs. They have to redo their offensive line. They need more weapons on the outside. They have a lot more needs, and there's two quarterbacks that they have. It's probably going to be Justin Fields, probably. But there's as Jets. Who the hell knows? Because I'll tell you something right now. Darnold is not going back to the Jets. I don't care who's the coach. He ain't going back there. Number one. As far as Minnesota goes, they'll bring back Daniel Jones, and that he'll be the veteran backup guy to JJ McCarthy. He was on the roster at the end of the year. That's what they're going to do there. The Giants is kind of the iffy one. If they take a Shador or they take a whoever Cam Ward, they're going to go with a veteran backup just guy, or they'll trade. They do a trade. Either the Jets or the Giants can do the trade. For like probably the name that's not a free agent, that's probably the most accessible because of the cap situation is Derek Carr. It's just so many things moving at the same time. It's really hard to kind of put it all in order where it's like easily digestible because it's not easily digestible. You know what I'm saying? There's so many things happening at the same time. All you can do is talk about the possibilities and what are the more logical steps, that's probably what I outlined. Is probably one of the more logical kind of avenues.
Well, if we don't go huge quarterback, we'll have a metric shit ton of cap space, second most in football, which could not have come early enough. Thank you, Tom Telesco, because we really need it. We got a ton of players that are going to be free agents this season, or in the event of like Maxx Crosby, no guaranteed money. We threw him into this mix. So Spot Track does a pretty cool thing where they figure out the market rate for a player on their position. And again, not hard numbers. There's a lot of, fit, scheme, who's more valuable where, do you have a lot of those players? It's obviously all very important. But if you just took like, hey, of the 32 teams out there, what would the average salary of this player be? And Spot Track's pretty good at it. It's not gospel, but it's an excellent place to start. It's a beautiful place to be like, let's start here and figure out if it makes sense or not. So let's go through, and we'll throw Maxx Crosby in here, of the free agents coming up out of the Raiders, what their proposed salary value is, and then see if we like, hey, we'll pay that, we won't, this guy I think we can get for cheaper because he's so much better here. This guy, I don't see the value, or this guy's not that good, but dude, if we get him for that cheap, let's for sure take a stab at him, and we'll go down the line. Maxx Crosby, again, 2 years left on his deal, no guaranteed money. He's pretty sure he's going to get a new contract this season. 3-year length, $100 million, roughly $32 million a season. You kind of have to do that. He's only 27 years old. I don't think he would require more. I think he wants to stay home. Maybe even a smidge cheaper, because he got his last contract. He for sure got paid, but it was, I think, a smidge cheaper than if he would have been on the open market. I think.
Well, also too, if we redo his deal, we're going to open up even more cap space this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's easily done. You can do it on just give him some straight cash, homie, like a roster bonus, but signing bonus, bang, here you go. Yeah. Just knock out a bunch of that shit right off the bat. You don't have to worry about it.
I wonder if we should have opened with this. I wonder how the Raiders are going to do this because there's so much cap space. I wonder if they do backload contracts. If there's let's just front load it because we got time now. Why kick the can down the street when we've got so much money to pay the piper right this second?
If you were to front load contracts, you would probably front load, let's say, a Sam Darnold contract, because it's more enticing to get him to come over, number one. And number two, Maxx Crosby is going to produce, so you're not worried about having him be backloaded. He's already a proven commodity at his position. So it's better to backload his and front load to entice a Sam Darnold to come.
Very true. I think the other half of that coin, though, also is, do the Raiders really feel like they can win now? So if they're front loading, they're like, okay, we probably still have a year or two before we think we're true contenders. Let's save that. Let's save some cap space for 2027, right? All right, we're winning the Super Bowl in 2 seasons. So let's make sure we got cap space to bring in, some all-pro safety or fill in a hole with somebody that we desperately need. I also wonder how much, because obviously Telesco clearly was like, we're not winning this season. Let's just have all our draft picks. Let's have all the cap space.
I don't think the plan was ever to try extra hard with all the cap space that he just didn't spend, even though we had holes that he could have filled with that cap space. So that was the plan. And, it worked in a sense where, yes, you have a ton of cap space, but he also left more than half of the starting defense without contracts.
Yeah.
Which is, not great. You would have wanted to maybe tie up 1 or 2 of those guys to make things easier. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the whole cap space thing for us is a little bit of fool's gold in that respect, because most of those guys there was 17 contributors on defense that we have to re-sign. That's a lot of spots.
It ended up being a blessing because now the new regime with these guys can decide who they want, right? So instead of Telesco deciding it, and then Spy Tech and Carroll are like, all right, we just signed this guy to 4-year deal. We got to make it work even if we don't want him. So it ended up being a giant blessing, right? Where this whole new regime gets to decide who we keep and how we want to pay him. I'm just saying it's a narrative to follow when these contracts start getting signed, if they're front loaded or back loaded. I think if they're front loaded, it's a sign. Yeah, they don't think we're going to win. We're going to do some longer contracts with these good guys to save money down the line. They're back loaded, like, oh, they're making some moves right now.
Dude, if we give Divine Diablo $15 million over 2 years, I'm going to riot.
Yeah. Well, let's go down the line. Koonce, $20 million a year. They're saying 2 years, $40 million. Obviously, edge rushers are premium. I thought with the injury, he basically had one half of one season where he was elite and then got hurt. How many teams are offering Malcolm Koonce $40 million for 2 years?
Well, the problem is, I don't think that the Eagles doing what they did is doing us any. Shut the hell up.
Well,
I don't think that the Eagles doing what they did with their defensive line is doing us any favors with Malcolm Koonce. Mm-hmm. I think that some teams that have a need at the position and some cap space are going to want to just kind of scour and see who are the best edge rushers available. And Malcolm Koonce is one of the best available. Yeah, he's going to get some looks for sure. I think the only way that we can keep him around is by offering a longer deal. That's all depending on how he's doing with his recovery with his injury. If the recovery with his injury is going, according to plan, I think Koonce being the player and having been the one who got injured in a contract year would value the length of a contract more than just the funny money, because that it's all about what's guaranteed, and if you have more years, you should have more guaranteed than 2 years guaranteed. So that'd be just the only kind of thing that we can do to kind of entice him to stick around, is to do maybe an extra year that other teams wouldn't do and spread out that guaranteed money a little bit more.
And if the Raiders are even halfway intelligent, they should have the best medical reports on him, right?
Oh, yeah,
and so
sure.
if the Raiders are like, this injury is worse than people are suspecting, and they let him walk, this is the one, because it's been rare where we're just like, oh, we'll just trust the Raiders, just trust John Gruden, trust Mayock, trust JMD, just trust these guys. They know what they're doing. They're doing something for a reason. Like, that's not been the case. With Malcolm Koonce, I'm going to kind of trust them, because they're going to, unless they're completely moronic, they're going to know the status of that knee better than any of us and any other team. So he's the rare guy where they're like, let him go for $18 million a year. And they're like, I like to keep him, but maybe the only time in the last 5 seasons I'm like, I'm just going to trust the team, because they know the medical records.
Well, also, you got to think about this too. Spytek came from a team that had 46 drafted or UDFAs on their team that they picked up. 20 out of the 22 starters were either drafted or signed UDFA. So he's familiar with how to keep your players.
Yeah.
What are the things you have to do to keep your own players on your team? If we can keep Koonce and Chase on, I think that would be amazing, because Snowden's still under our control. I think it'd be great.
I think that's the biggest thing against us keeping Koonce is injury, and we have a whole bunch of other defensive ends that are either like top-notch rotational guys. Maybe Pete Carroll's like Tyree Wilson. I can turn this guy into a stud. Like you mentioned, like we've been so good at finding just off the scrap heap quality rotational defensive ends. It's like, do we want to commit another $40 million to another one?
Look at the Eagles did, man. They're 9 deep.
Eagles did.
Nine freaking deep. And that's without their top free agent signing, even dressing for the game. They're 9 deep. And I think that the defense that we saw in the Super Bowl, that's the way that we wanted to play. And that's the way we would have played had we had all of our defensive linemen healthy. That's the way. That's what we wanted to do, because that's what Patrick Graham did when AP took over. He wasn't blitzing like crazy. If anything, he was blitzing like a corner blitz or something like that. It was just our front four kicking ass on the offensive linemen and sagging back, and that's how we got all those turnovers, and that's how we were able to get the best scoring defense during that span. If you want to go that direction, then you have to sign Koonce and Chase on. You need to have that talent on that defensive line.
Did you see what Maxx said about Koonce on that SiriusXM show? He was just all about him. He's just all about him.
He loves him, dude.
He's great. I mean, he was great for half a season. Hopefully that's what continues for his sake.
Well, I mean, you can't realistically, because you can, of course, but realistically, if you take a look at the situation, the whole Mick Ziegler, they were pushing Tyree Wilson out there when we were like, why isn't Koonce playing more?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as AP took over, he's like, no, we're not doing that. Tyree Wilson, you can play tackle if you want, but Koonce is a better edge rusher, and we want to win games. And I didn't draft the dude. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't the guy that, wrote the name on the card. So he just played the best player there. And once he was given that opportunity, you could see how it changed the defense. So There's plus and minuses. Another thing that we haven't talked about is, I mean, dude, Koonce is a Gruden Mayock draft pick. This is 2 regimes ago. Like, there's no ties whatsoever to whoever's in front office. But we also don't want to do what Mick Ziegler did and get rid of a bunch of good players just because they're not your guys, right? You just keep the best players available and figure it out. So I mean, it's again just kind of like with the draft, the quarterback thing. This thing is just so many moving parts, man.
He's the second most complicated free agent signing based on what does the rest of the league think about him, because he's had one half of one good season. We have a good amount of defensive. If there's any position we have more depth than any, like, good players and depth, it's defensive end. Does the rest, like the Tyree Wilson factor, is like, does anyone think they can trust him to be the guy or not? And then I'll affect the Koonce thing. So it's like, he's the second most complicated one. The next guy's the most complicated one. Trevon Merrick, 3 years, $47 million. That's over $15 million per year. There's a lot of safeties that are going to be available. He's going to be one of the top ones. That's a lot of money. We all want him. There's no question about that. A lot of money for a safety. I feel like Patrick Graham loves him. I think it's going to add to us wanting to keep him more. But I think he'll be the hardest to hold on to because of the market and his age.
I don't know if he's going to be that hard. It's just, you just got to pay the money.
That's what I mean by hard. Whoever pays the most.
Ultimately, look, if you want to have good players on your team, you have to pay them, right? You have to pay the guys eventually. And when you have a player that's going to be entering his prime of his career, yeah, you got to pay that guy. And especially if you're running a defense that is as complex in the secondary as a Patrick Graham defense, he asks a lot of his secondary. Mm-hmm. You're going to need those guys. And yeah, is there other guys out there who can do a job similar? Yeah, but it's not the guy that you've seen do it, and the guy that can hit the ground running because he knows exactly what to do. So there's a lot of advantages to keeping Merrick around. The first and foremost is he's a really good player, and he's going to be one of the top safeties available, if not the top safety available out there. And the whole combination of his career trajectory, he just keeps getting better and better. He seems to put it all together this year. When Epps was gone, who was kind of like the vocal leader in the secondary, he stepped up. You have a running mate in Polamalu who just showed that he's an absolute stud. Okay, let's put these pieces together. It's a misnomer that these teams are like strictly built from the draft. Mm-hmm. If you're re-signing your own guys, that's an extension of free agency. Okay, it's not a true free agency because you didn't let the guy leave, but if you don't sign him, he's gonna eventually they're gonna leave. So that discovery, draft, and development, his whole development part, yeah, you're developing the guy for a reason, and when the time comes, you don't want to let all your development go to waste. And I think Trevon Merrick is a completely different player than what we thought he was when he came out of TCU. I think he's a much more well-rounded and an effective player than that, center fielder safety.
Well, that's exactly why I think it's going to be hard to keep him, because he played so well, and I think he fits so well in the Patrick Graham system. Again, I don't think he's some schlub that's just a system safety, but I think he'll excel under Patrick Graham more than he could under just a standard operating procedure, which is why I think maybe the Raiders would let him go. Because he looked really, really good, and he is really, really good, but we think it's part of the system. There's going to be a lot of demand for it. Again, I want to keep him, but if someone's offering him $20 million a year in 4 years, it's like, can't do it, right? But again, that's why I think he's the most complicated one, is because of all the moving parts. We're 20 minutes into the segment. We've only done 3 players, so we'll move along. Robert Spillane, $20 million for 2 years. I think he's way more valuable on the Raiders than anywhere else. I don't think anyone else is looking at Robert Spillane as like a must-have. I'll break the bank for him at all. I'm pretty confident we could keep him for market, or even maybe a little below market. He loves being at the Raiders. And I think other teams aren't looking at him as like anything crazy.
What we have to take a look at too is he going to be able to stretch himself a little bit? The Pete Carroll linebackers, they're asked to cover a lot of space, man. That's something that we need to kind of keep in consideration. If we can get, let's say, the mindset and the physicality of a Spillane, but let's say the mobility of a Diablo, that's kind of like the prototype Pete Carroll linebacker. Mm-hmm. Can we kind of make it work? Sure. I think that Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham, they're talented enough and flexible enough to be able to make that happen. But he's definitely not a prototypical linebacker that Pete Carroll would like. He's a little bit more boxy than the prototypical linebackers that he's had in the past.
I think Patrick Graham Graham's talked about how he's his eyes and ears on the field, and Graham loves him so much. And I don't think there'll be a giant demand outside of the room for him. Mm-hmm. I think they can convince him that I could be wrong, but I'm predicting he's the easiest signing that we have as far as like top notch players that we're going to be paying more than 10 million, 10-ish million or whatever. I think he'll be the easiest one to keep. Could be wrong. We'll see how it plays out. Divine Diablo, I know you hate this one. $50 million for 2 years, $7.5 million for a 26-year-old inside linebacker.
Look, if you're a former safety, you should be able to cover a whole lot better than what Divine Diablo is able to cover. Yeah. Then that's kind of like, if you're going to be an undersized.
I wonder if that's why they moved him. They're like, this guy can't cover. We got to move you up to the line.
I mean, look, yeah, he had a bigger frame for a safety. He was a little bit bigger, and he was able to transition, pretty nicely into the linebacker role. But his coverage ability is just not there if you're going to be an undersized linebacker. There's a few guys in the draft right now that you can get that are better coverage linebackers. That dude, Knight Jr. from South Carolina, you could pick that guy up probably, maybe in the 4th or 5th round. Dude's like 6'2", 245. That guy's a freaking animal. Way better coverage skills. And his skills aren't where they need to be across the board for him to be able, for anyone to justify paying him that kind of money.
It will be a shame to lose the coolest name on the team, Divine Diablo.
It's a nice name.
That's the coolest name on the team. That's the coolest name I've ever seen on a football player. Harrison Bryant, we got the best tight end room in football, and Harrison Bryant rounded out nicely. $3.5 million for 1 year. You want to pay $3.5 for a good blocking tight end?
There are some nice tight ends / H-backs, which is basically what you're going to need in a Chip Kelly offense. You're going to need a guy that's going to be able to run block on the move, not just inline type of tight end style. Mm-hmm. There's actually quite a few tight end / H-back players in the draft this year. A lot. So I think we're going to be able to fill that role of a third tight end / H-back type of guy through the draft.
I think the only thing that could save him is how Chip Kelly views Brock Bowers. There's like, oh yeah, he's tight end by name only. Like if I'm going to line up 2 tight ends, it's going to be Mayer and Bryant or whoever else. I'm more or less with you. Almost $4 million for a third tight end. I don't get it. But if Chip's like, no, we'll have Brock and 2 tight ends on the field because I don't view Brock as a tight end, that might be the only thing that saves him, but I'm more or less with you. Chase on 2 years, $6.8 million is 3.4, only 25 years old. I keep forgetting.
No-brainer. That's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. If you sign him for that, you give it to him right now.
Yep. I'd sign him for longer. I try to give him a 3-year. I don't think he'd take it.
Yeah,
I don't think he'd take it. But
he might not want to do that though.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think he would, but if he if he's feels like he can't get anywhere. Adam Butler, 2 years, $5.7 million, 2.8 a year. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure.
We can get him for that cheap. We'll keep going fast because this is taking forever. We're on a bunch of 1 year guys. I'll select a couple and then we'll just kind of group them all. Nate Hobbs, 1 year, 2.8. This was the one that I had my biggest eyebrow raise. That's pennies for I guess a prove it year, right? Like, can you stay healthy, Nate? right? Like, can you stay healthy? That's basically what this contract would be. Can you prove that you can stay healthy for an entire season? Here's 2.8. You for sure do that.
Yeah, it's more than likely it's going to be a 1-and-1, a club option for the year 2. Give yourself some time and flexibility to create some, a little bit of cap space, I guess. If he does perform well this first year, you have that option second year to be able to extend and give yourself maybe a little bit of relief, or the other way around to front load and give yourself a little bit of relief the following year. But yeah, 2.8 is a little, it's a little tough. Because look, he wasn't even lighting the world on fire even when he was playing. So we had like overall our corners had like the worst coverage grades overall in the NFL last year. So it wasn't like these guys were, knocking the doors down to the Hall of Fame or anything.
Yeah, I think when Nate Hobbs has flashed or put together like, third, fourth goods, like, 1/3 of a great season at 2.8 to prove he can stay healthy, I think that's with how much cap space we have. I think you do it.
Yeah.
Everyone else is $2 million or below 1-year deals. John Jenkins, Cody Whitehair, Amir Abdullah, Marcus Epps, Alexander Madison, Andreas Pete, Darnay Holmes. Any one of these guys, you're like, it's not worth the lint in my pocket. And any of these guys, you're like, sign them right now if we can get them for that.
No, just let them go. If you want to bring back Darnay Holmes, maybe as like a, not even then, because you can get a young guy. It depends on how they feel about Darnay Holmes. I think he played okay when he was in there late in the year. He came in and he was used to the Patrick Graham system. He had played for him for a year with the Giants, and he did okay. I think he got an interception, but that's probably the only name I'd see that I would give any money to that you can't really get better production from somewhere else, especially the offensive line. Those guys are god awful, dude.
I think Jenkins, because I think it's the age that's the big issue with him.
Yeah,
right?
you don't want to
35 years old for a defensive tackle.
$$$2 million. Because look,
but he got better. That's the thing, though. He hasn't been declining. He improved last season. So I like it's like, okay, every now and then there's like the mid-30s dudes that can have a lot of longevity, and he's proven that he's gotten better in back-to-back seasons. Like, okay, even if he holds serve, he's worth $2 million.
You want to give him that if he's like a Vince Wilfork, that type of guy. Like when he doesn't play every snap, but when he's in there, you can see that he's dominating, right? That's just not who he is. So we talked about the high probability of drafting Mason Graham. There's no need or room in on the defensive line for John Jenkins if you have Mason Graham there and Adam Butler.
Wilkins.
Got Wilkins.
This is all pre-draft, right? This is all kind of pre-draft and also pre what we do at quarterback. If we're spending $150 million on a quarterback, we got to start tightening the belt in other places. But I feel like we were very optimistic. There was only like the only money guys were like, nah, that's too much. Was Diablo, and we're like, yeah, I think that's a fair amount of money, and I want to keep him.
You signed seven of these guys. I think 7 of the top 9. I think 7 of the top 9 guys.
Pretty happy.
Yeah, we're good with that.
All right. We had more, but we spent so much time on that. I wonder if you guys really liked it. Let us know. Comment section if you like the breakdowns as opposed to the batter. Ready to do some what up Windbags?
Let's get it on.
Let's get it on. Objectivity. W5J. I think you got this is all because last show was our 300th show. This is 301. So there's a lot of we wish we could say thank you to everybody who congratulated us at 300, but we can't. I think you guys are knowledgeable all the time and funny sometimes. I don't know how you don't have at least 50,000 subs already. Is that a compliment? Knowledgeable all the time, funny sometimes. Is that like a thank you ... question mark, or a thank you and a fist bump?
I think that he's saying that when we try to keep it light, because it's not all the time. You don't want to have like a super hokey show that's just about zingers and one-liners. You want to have a little bit more depth than that. But I think he's saying that where every time that we talk about football, it's knowledgeable, and when we decide to be funny, we can be funny.
It's not about rusty trombone or stained ball,
The pussy juice
dirty,
cocktail,
dirty Sanchez, butthole pleasures. It's not about butthole pleasures at all.
It's about connection.
Love. It's about passion. Let us know. What movie is that from? Comment section. Nightmare Raider, sweet name. I still remember episode 100. Babyface RJ and Soto rocking the stubble, Navajo necktie and dress shirt.
No, I remember that.
Yep.
I still have that stupid thing.
We were like, oh, let's get dressed up. And I was on the road. I have a tuxedo t-shirt. I'm going to wear my tuxedo t-shirt. And I forgot it.
Yeah, you forgot it.
Ruined the bed.
I look like Kappa, freaking slapdick, just sitting there with a freaking shirt on.
You look good. I know what you're talking about. And yeah, we're both much hairier. One of us more so than the other. But we're a lot hairier now than we were.
Yeah, so homegirl's son is a barber.
Mm.
And at Super Bowl, he's looking at me and he's like, man, aren't you get tired of chewing on your mustache? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of weird. He's like, sit down. And he pulled out this little, like, it was like one of those like Halliburton cases, you know?
Like a Pelican case?
Like, all his stuff in there. I was like, oh, man. And he freaking trimmed me up. He freaking gave me a little, blended it in a little bit down here. It looks good.
Along that line, 9 Spartan 40, Soda looks like Santa Claus, who only wraps gifts in silver and black. I'm telling you, dude, you should have dressed up as Santa this last Christmas.
Soto Santa doesn't wrap gifts. Soto Santa opens gifts. I'm like the Bizarro World Santa. I don't give. I get.
Dude, we're both old enough. We don't open gifts. We give gifts. 40-year-old men don't get Christmas presents.
Dude,
I give them to kids, nieces.
I swear, I had like a coffee mug in my hand. I'm just sitting back watching TV while everyone's opening gifts.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we got one for you." I'm like, "Sweet." I just put it on under my arm. Like, no one cares if I open it or I don't. Just everyone's like opening their stuff. I'm just sitting there drinking my coffee.
There's the Mason-Dixon line, which is about 22 years old, where you now give more presents than you receive. You know, when you're a little kid, like you give maybe a popsicle stick man to your mom, and you're just hoarding presents from grandma, grandpa, friends. You're just like hoarding them, right? And then you get to 40 and you're like, you're buying, oh, I gotta buy one for the wife, gotta buy one for the kid. People who like kind of like work under me, you definitely have to buy them something. Friends, people that need it, in-laws, and you get like something from your wife. Like my daughter's not old enough to get me anything. I get like 2 things and I buy 40.
Ladies out there, ladies, listen to me right now. Booty is not a Christmas gift. Okay? Giving it up is not a Christmas gift. Just get your man a gift. Okay? Messing around.
There's a great we're way over, but there was a great Instagram reel of a guy who's like, he's in a car and he's just like driving up to a hooker in like a back alley. And he's like, hey, how much to have you drive, like sit in the passenger seat and not critique my driving on a road trip? It's like $200. It's like, get in. And it's all him just like paying hookers to like give him a compliment.
There was another
like,
one that he did.
Buy him a
like,
Christmas present.
How much to lose an argument to me?
He's like, how it?
He's like
how much to tell me you're proud of me and not make fun of me when I cry? It's like $50. Like, dude, it's like throws it at her. Like pulls.
He's like, he was like, how much to lose an argument to me? She's like, 150. He's like, 150. He's like, she's like, wait a second. Do I have to say you're right? And he's like, is that extra? She's like, yeah, that's extra. How much? 250. Get in.
All right, that's it for us. We'll be back next week. We're on the other side of 300. Sparta 301. And we're still alive. It's a miracle. See if we're alive next week when we come back. And until then, knock on wood if you're with me. Hey, you made it to the end of our video. Great job. I know you want more. Go ahead and click the next video. And if you're feeling crazy, go ahead and subscribe.